Hi there, Doug Goldstein here. First of all, I want to thank you very, very much for coming today. One of the topics that people always expect me to talk about is how to make a lot of money because they figure, hey, Doug, you're in the money business. You've been doing that forever. So actually, I brought on BatSheva Goldstein, who is my wife and an investment advisor and the developer of FinancialDate Cards, which we're going to talk a little bit about. And I brought her on because I really want to make sure that when we talk about how to be super successful in terms of making money, you understand what's at the core of it. And she told me recently about a course that she gave to the Tel Aviv University. It was in the business school, I think, and I'll ask you to tell me more details about that. And there was one particular thing that you said, and what you said, I'm going to start talking to clients about all the time because I think it's going to make them much, much more successful. So first of all, tell me 1 minute, what was the course about or that you taught in Tel Aviv University?
I gave a short workshop in the Tel Aviv University School for Family Business Centers.
Okay. Now, when you were telling me about it, you said that you had this metaphor about juggling. And as soon as you said it, I said, "Oh, people always feel like they're juggling their money," but you really refined it and said something that I thought was particularly focused and interesting. So, and really applies to everyone listening today. Tell me how knowing something about juggling can make people much more successful in terms of managing their money.
First of all, do you know how to juggle?
I'm able to juggle three balls.
Okay, so here, I'm going to toss three balls to you in virtual space.
Okay,
The
I'm
first
juggling.
the first
Whoops.
ball is the ball of your past. The second is the ball of your present, and the third is the ball of your future. And no matter what you do in life, these three balls, your past, present, and future, are all interacting with each other. The arc is going from one to another, and any decision you make is influenced by your past, your present, and what you hope the future is going to be.
Okay, so
So now,
yeah, sorry, because I have a little insight because you've explained this to me before, but I just wanted to say when we do financial plans for people, so we're always looking about, first off, I say that the financial plan is a snapshot of where you are today, and for the future, it's a cash flow analysis of where you're going to be from today until the end of the financial plan, which is just a nice euphemism for when you die. So, but then people say, well, where does the past fit in? And I said, well, the past is how you got to today. Everything that you've done up until now, until we know where you are today, is exactly the past. Okay, so that's the beginning, the first half of your story about juggling.
okay, so that's great. When you doing a financial plan for one person, you have those three balls. But now, if you have a couple, you have the spouse, you have three other balls because the the partner in the relationship is juggling their own past, present, and future. And now when you have the couple together, there are these six balls in the air. So how do you juggle six balls? Even the most experienced clowns have trouble with that. And if you look up on Google or YouTube how to juggle, they'll tell you don't look at the ball, but you should look at the arc of where the ball's going. And when you know where the ball's going, reach out your hand and you can anticipate where it's going to be, and then you'll be able to catch it and throw it back in the air.
Okay, so
So
the idea is that when you're juggling, whether it's with three balls or four or five or six or more, you're not supposed to focus on the ball itself because if you can't focus on six balls, right? You can really only handle one, maybe two, I don't know. But you should look where it's going and by anticipating that, that's where you put your hand.
correct. The metaphor breaks down when you're talking about real balls versus past, present, and future balls because juggling balls, they all have the same weight and they all just fall flat there or bounce depending on what you're juggling. But when you're juggling your past, present, and the future, not all of them are equal weighted. So you so that gives more importance to seeing where they're going.
Okay. Okay. So now let's talk about how that applies to personal finance and investing.
When you're juggling and you're looking at the arc, you're not looking at the actual ball. You're projecting. So when you train yourself to look at patterns, and not actually the numbers that are in front of you, but to see things in the big picture, that could help your financial conversations or any conversation even more because you're not necessarily focusing on the ball in the air or the words that are being said, but you're focusing on the subtext, the arc, where it's going, where it's taking you.
Yeah, that's fun. Just as you're describing that, I'm reminded when many years ago I was working on the book Rich as a King with world chess champion Susan Polgar. Not to name drop, but it was a great experience that I got to write this book with her about how the strategies of chess can be applied to investing. And I remember one thing I asked her because for those of you who are not chess players, one of the cool things that chess players like to do when they're awesome, like she is they'll play games all in their mind. So everything's happening in their head, and you may work on a board, but it's all happening in their head. And even more impressive is they might play 2 games or 3 games or 10 games simultaneously or more, all at the same time. The normal people are playing on a board, and the professional is just playing in her head. I asked her, Susan, how do you do that? It's like impossible. How do you know where every single piece is at every moment? And she said, that's not really how I'm thinking about the board. She said, what I'm thinking about is more of the direction of the power and the defense and she sort of sketched on a piece of paper. It was much more amorphous. There were arcs and lines and curves and she said, that's how I see the game. In other words, I'm not looking at 600 different pieces when I'm playing in a dozen games. I'm just looking at the power structures. And somehow I'm getting the feeling this is what you're describing in using the juggling metaphor. Am I onto something here?
Absolutely right. That's exactly it. It's looking at the patterns, and the pieces are powerful in and of themselves, but their true power comes with how they relate to other pieces.
Got it. Okay, so now once people pick up on this juggling metaphor and they like the idea and they realize that every financial discussion is based on past, present, and future. And again, in financial planning terms, we'll say, okay, where did you get the money from? How much do you have right now? And where are you trying to go? And then each spouse has that issue. How can people best communicate so that they can actually work on one unified financial plan and actually make an investment decision? Because at the end of all of these discussions, and I don't want and all this touchy-feely stuff, and I'm not saying that in a pejorative way. I'm pointing out that this is so important, but you have to make a decision: buy or sell, spend or save.
That's a million dollar question. Um, Acknowledging that there are these different balls in the air and acknowledging that the patterns exist and looking at the patterns already is a tremendous step forward because if you're oblivious to this, you're just focusing on the investment decision. And that could be an investment decision, whatever that decision is, that may or may not reflect on the people making it, and they may not be in their best interest. So having the communication beforehand and knowing where you're each coming from and where you want to get to together and the possible stumbling blocks on that path just helps you develop better communication skills.
Got it.
And those better communication skills help make better financial decisions.
So you develop a tool. We're just about out of time, but let's just spend a moment to talk about the tool that you developed that really helps people not only to make the decisions now, but to become really good at this kind of financial communication. Because there are studies that show that most divorces are caused by financial disputes. I don't know if it's true or not. I've heard people argue both sides of it, but anyone who's married, anyone who's been in a relationship knows that not everyone sees eye to eye about money, and that's normal and that's okay. But we need to work to get better at it. But I don't think people even know what to do. So, what have you got?
So I have a deck of 50 questions in FinancialDate Discussion Cards. 50 questions because there's no one magic question that's going to get you there. But by discussing a dozen, 2 dozen, 3 dozen questions, you'll begin to see the patterns that shape your decisions and see the patterns that shape your spouse's decisions. So to find out more about the cards, you could go to financialdate.com, or you could follow me on LinkedIn, BatSheva Goldstein, and you could learn. You could download a sample of free questions. You could buy the deck, and you could begin to open up discussions to 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 discuss money in ways that aren't just based on numbers, but to take your past money stories and your past experience and how those shape you into the future.
That's great. I think it's so important. And like I opened up in the beginning and I said, if you want to be successful in finance, success has many, many different um, faces. And I think that the most important face you have to have is that you have to be satisfied in your financial life. And you won't be satisfied unless you and your wife together, or you and your spouse together, are satisfied. And the way to do it is to develop the skills to really communicate about money at financialdate.com. You can learn about it, try a few of the cards yourself. If it's the right thing for you, then go ahead and do it. Of course, if you're a profile client, then you probably recently got an offer to get a free pack of Financial Date cards as well. So again, that's financialdate.com. BatSheva, thank you very, very much. I appreciate your coming on the show and explaining this.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. Take care.